Oh, well. Fucking open it in a separate window, please. What I can do. Okay. Hello, 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 everybody. Thank you very much for joining me for another one of our monthly office hours that we're going to tackle today. If you are attending this live, if you wouldn't mind dropping a message in the chat, let me know that you can both see me, that you can see the video, and you can also hear me, just so I know that everything is working kind of as I would expect it, or as I hope it is working. So if you wouldn't mind just taking a second there to just post something in the chat, let me know that you can both see and hear me. I know there's a little bit of a delay from what I see and from what you guys see, and so I want to make sure that I don't go too long without having any kind of like audio here. So go ahead and let that catch up for a second. So it's still catching up my live thing. So when you finally see this, let me know. But at any rate, I'm going to go ahead and get started a little bit here. Oh my goodness, is it really that delayed? You can see it here. Okay, cool. So I guess the feed that I'm getting is very, very delayed. Thank you very much, Anders. All right, so anyway, all right, so let's go and get started. So thank you very much for joining me. Sorry about that little hiccup there. I was, the feed that I'm getting, that I'm seeing on like the YouTube like studio thing, was showing me something that was almost multiple minutes behind. And so I was like, oh shoot, it's gonna take a while for me to find out if the audio and the video is working. So anyway, one person says you can see and hear me. Anders, thank you very much. We're all good. So thank you very much for everybody for joining me today. For those of you who are new, give me just a second to kind of explain what this is, what I do during these office hours. But first, let me just kind of start with a brief introduction of who I am and what this whole thing is, what I like to do during these office hours. My name is Andrew Connell. I'm a Microsoft MVP, like 20-year MVP, and also a founder of a training company or an education company in the Microsoft 365 developer ecosystem space called Voitanos. I've been doing SharePoint development since September of 2003. Now I do lots of stuff around Microsoft 365 development. I do stuff with Microsoft Azure, SharePoint Framework, SharePoint Embedded, Microsoft Teams, and spending a lot more time in the Copilot extensibility space as well. I've got a bunch of stuff to share with that. That's some news that's happened recently. You can see how to reach me there, my contact info over there in the bottom left-hand side. Email, there's my personal site if you want to learn a little bit more about me. And then also Voitanos as well. I'm on the socials. I'm mostly active on LinkedIn and Blue Sky. I am also on Threads, and I've kind of stalled out a bit with my YouTube investment here because well, I'm working on something that I'm looking forward to sharing with everybody in a future office hours, but I can't really share that just yet. But YouTube has kind of fallen off my priority for the short term. But that's just for the short term. So don't go anywhere if you're following me over there. I like to do these office hours. So just to kind of explain what I like to do during these office hours, I do this once a month, these public office hours. And what I like to do is to focus on kind of what I see as like the biggest news around these main areas: SharePoint Framework, Microsoft Teams, Microsoft 365 Copilot. But I also want to leave ample time to answer your questions. So apologies for mispronouncing your name if I get this wrong, but Taiwo, you say this is your first time joining us. Welcome. You're just starting out in your career. So I'm guessing you say after school. So I'm guessing you just wrapped up school. Welcome. Welcome to the community. I'm happy to have you join us. And if you've got a question about anything, please feel free to drop a question in the chat. I have one question that was submitted ahead of time by Mike V. Mike, are you here? I don't know if you're here or not, but if you would, let me know if you're here. I'd like to know, like, if you're here, and I'm going to answer Mike's question first. Jono posted a question as well here in the chat, and I'll tackle at the end as well, that we'll dive into. Just now realizing something, that I don't have something installed that I want to show you how to do this, Jono, but I still think I can still show it to you. I don't think I've installed in my virtual machine that I'm presenting with, but we may just, well, that may be a good use case, a good scenario to go through and actually get it installed so I can show it to you. Okay, at any rate, I'll definitely do that. So I have two questions that are queued up ahead of time. One is from Mike and one is from Jono, and I'll deal with those towards the end. Usually I like to do a little bit of like an introduction on like, well, what's the state of the union with like Voitanos and what's going on with Voitanos. I'm just going to take like, I've got something I'm working on that is a huge change with the business. It's going to roll out in multiple waves. I've already rolled one wave out where I have essentially a new company brand, a new logo, a new, well, it seems very small to people who aren't like, if you've never been through this, but it was a big deal to me. A new font on the website, a new company logo, and a lot of like verbiage and stuff. The next wave that is going to release with this is a brand new website. So everything, all the URLs are going to stay the same, but it's just a brand new like layout and organization of everything that's going to be there. So Eric, if you want, you can put it on Discord. That's cool. If you want to go through and also put your question here in the chat, that works too. I have Discord up on the Discord web client up in that I'm going to share in just a minute. So I can definitely, I'll see the question there, but if you want to put it here in the chat so everybody can see it, that'll work, but you'll be number 3. Okay. So there's a couple more waves that are going to happen after the website gets launched. I won't tell you when I hope to get the website launched because I don't want to miss my date if I share it. I don't want to share a date and then miss it. But trust me, I'll be very visible when it's ready. I'm really excited about it. I love the way it looks. Got a professional designer to help me with this. He did a fantastic job. Highly recommend this guy if you need a designer. He went through. I've now got a developer who's saving me some time. I was going to do it myself, but frankly, he's faster than I am at this, so I'm letting him do it. And my developer is taking the design, which is all in Figma, and is chopping it up into HTML, JavaScript for the small interactive pieces, and then and using Tailwind CSS v4. So he's building out all the page designs. Frankly, they're all done. I've got like 3 PRs I've got to go in and review. Those are all done. It's just now a part of me taking his designs and implementing the theme on making the theme available, creating a theme for the website, the engine that I use to build my website. I use a static site generator called Hugo, and I've now got to go through and build a theme using all the design he's done. So it takes some time, but I'm making some progress and get that done really soon. There are 2 more major updates that I will be launching throughout the first part of this year after the website design goes live. I'm kind of doing these in phases. The third one is probably the biggest one next to the website. I'm not going to share what that is right now. All I will tell you is that if you are currently a student and you've bought any of my courses in the past, it will be a significant change for you in a very positive way. How you access your content, how you interact, all that kind of stuff. So I'm super excited about that, but I'm in the very early stages of that. As I'm, instead of trying to boil the ocean and do everything at once, I'm kind of rolling these things out in phases. And then the right now, the final wave that will go out will be after that one, after wave 4. So when it's time to share more, I'll share more. And if you want to keep in touch with what's going on, best way to do that, sign up to my newsletter. Just newsletter.voitanos.io to get the latest and greatest. My newsletter always goes out on Tuesdays. It usually goes out at 11 a.m., which was 9 minutes ago. And it's not out yet because I was racing to get a bunch of stuff done. And one article turned into 2 articles that took a little bit longer to write than I thought it was going to. So it's all done. I kind of just have to hit publish, but I didn't want to race and do that and make a mistake in the 10 minutes before our webinar or this live stream was going to go live. So, but I got some good stuff about that. We're going to talk a little bit about it in just a minute. Okay. So let's go into the agenda. And I don't have really a whole lot to go through in terms of SharePoint Framework and Teams updates. It's been really quiet in that space recently. As far as the SharePoint Framework goes, let me switch back over to my slides here. We are still, there's been no change in the last couple months. We are on SharePoint Framework version 1.20. You can get detail, like breakdown of what's in 1.20 from my unboxing video or unboxing article that you see linked there in orange. This is just go to voitanos.io and you click on the learn part on the side at the top and then go articles and you'll find it in there. This update really was relatively minor. It fixed a big Webpack issue we were having that I'm showing you down there in the bottom right. It made a bunch of changes to ESLint and the ESLint rule configuration, a couple little minor changes to React templates. And then the other big thing that it did was, the other two things were around adaptive card extensions. So we had Microsoft added the ability for quick views on adaptive card on ACEs. Before they only were, you could render those using an adaptive card. Now you can do this also using HTML, which means you should be able to put a React app as well inside of your quick view. So that's a nice little improvement. And then furthermore, the other big change they did was they improved on what we did just have as these line charts that were available to us in Microsoft. What is this? This line chart here that you see here. This is only that was what we had originally. Sorry, I just got an alert that somebody just posted something. I totally derailed me. It's one of you that's here, and I think you were joking with me. I don't think I said that. But at any rate, do me a favor, don't do that again. I meant to have that as do not disturb. I'm not sure how that came across. The other part that we have is there were three new design templates that they gave us. They gave us these pie charts that you see. Where'd my mouse go? These pie charts that you see down here. They gave us these bar charts, and they also gave us these donut charts. So that's the only real updates that they did there. Now, in terms of what's coming with the SharePoint framework, this is what Microsoft has shared a few times. I don't really hold too much stock in these updates that they share, what's coming in the next version, because things always seem to change. We'll see. I would expect we're going to learn more about this sometime in this quarter. I don't expect that we're going to get anything like this in January, but it should be. I would expect at least a beta release to this, or a little preview, coming sometime later in by the end of March is what I would say for now. So that's basically it for now on the SharePoint framework. Before I talk about Copilot here, there is one thing I do want to highlight with one thing I do want to highlight around Microsoft Teams update. There was a big update to the Teams toolkit where Microsoft added in some UX changes to it, and they reorganized some of the UI pieces to it. They also added some other embellishments or enhancements to the entire thing. And then the last thing that they did that was a big update was they added the ability for us to do interactive debugging with declarative agents when we're running those from the Teams toolkit. So if you subscribe to my newsletter, I'll have some information and a link to where you can learn more about that for my newsletter that comes out today. And if you subscribe to it after I send the newsletter out, you will get an update with a link to the most recent one. Where you can get a link for that. So make sure you do that if you're just now joining us, or if you're joining us during the recording, you use the link, go to newsletter.voitanos.io to make sure that you get the latest, that you can see the latest one. Okay. So the next thing I want to touch on here is around Microsoft 365 Copilot. And this is a big deal. This is what I talked about in my what's going to be the subject of my newsletter that goes out today. Last Wednesday, on January the 15th, Microsoft announced what's called Microsoft 365 Copilot. Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat. And I don't want to be yet another one of the people who is publishing or saying the same thing that everybody else is seeing, with respect to the announcement they made last Wednesday, which is like all the features of it, what's there, what's not there. I want to touch on it from a different point of view. I want to talk about it from the developer's perspective. And the reason why I want to do this is because I think that this is, I don't want to go as far as saying it's a game changer, but it's a pretty big deal. In the past, so let me switch over actually to my, switch over here to my VM or to my desktop. And all right, so this is the announcement. Now I have a link to this in the newsletter that goes out today. And if you missed it, let me just grab that announcement and I'll just post this in the chat. So Copilot announcement. Okay. So just go ahead and post that in the chat. Now, it explains a whole lot of stuff and about what's there, what's not there. And there's a video a little bit farther down that talks about it. But that's not what's important to me about it. The big thing that's important to me here is, where is it in the text? There you go. Pay-as-you-go agents. All right. So what is this? So today, if you want to be a developer building custom agents, you have to have a Microsoft 365 tenant. And so that means you either have to have and you have to have a commercial tenant, right? You have to have a commercial tenant. So before this announcement, you couldn't even if you had a Microsoft 365 developer tenant that you got through the Microsoft 365 developer program subscription, and you got one of those free tenants with the 25 licenses on it, you couldn't even put Copilot on that because you couldn't purchase the $30 per user per month Copilot license and add that to your developer tenant. So what that meant is you had to use a real commercial tenant. And when I say commercial tenant, I mean one of the tenants that you have to pay for a license. So for example, in my article that's linked to my in my article that I linked to today, I give you a couple different examples here of what your cost would be associated with this. So in order to do Copilot development, Copilot custom agent development using something like the Teams Toolkit, you would have to have the $30 per user per month with an annual commitment license. So right off the bat, $360 per person per year that you know you're going to be spending on this. And then you had to have one of the licenses that's supported by Microsoft 365 Copilot for your tenant. And I linked to the article here in the docs that lists all the different licenses that are available to us. But I just grabbed a couple of them just to kind of highlight them here in this article. So what you see here is that I've got like an E5 is about $55.75. Not about, it is. $55.75 in the US. That comes out to almost $670 a year. An E3, a little less expensive, but you're looking at $400 a year. You can drop all the way down to an F3 license, which is $96 a year, or go down to a business basic, which also includes a 30-day trial, but that's going to come out to $72 a year. So you're looking at spending at the minimum, you're looking at spending $432 a year if you get the business basic license plus the Microsoft 365 Copilot license, or going all the way up if you got an E5 over $1,000 a year. Now, from my point of view, for the work that we're doing in the enterprise space and everything around Microsoft 365, I mean, I don't want to trivialize the fact that $1,000 or $400 is not a lot of money. It isn't when you look at like the cost of doing business. The fact that all of our tools are free. Visual Studio Code. I mean, I remember the days when we had to buy a Visual Studio subscription that was like $2,000 a year, and that was just the developer environment. That didn't even include anything we wanted to do to like test out things like SharePoint or other server-based products. So to me, $432 a year, that's cheap. When I look at the cost of doing business. I'm not even going to try and do the math for that, but that's less than $20 a month. Even if you go all the way up to an E5, I mean, that's still less than $100 a month. So to me, that's not that bad. But one of the challenges with this is that I still can't even, it still is a cost that's associated with it, and it's a sunk cost. So what I talk about in my article here, why I think this is a big deal, is that Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, the big thing that it adds is it adds consumption-based pricing. So consumption-based pricing is What I mean by that is I have a broken link. Oh well, a broken image. What I mean by that is that you are going to pay per use. So there's no commitment, there's no annual commitment, there's no monthly commitment. You basically hook up your Microsoft Copilot Studio to an Azure resource group, and now you're going to pay per message for all of the work that you do with Copilot. Now you can't do everything that you can do with Microsoft 365 Copilot, and that's where over here that from the article or from the announcement last week, these are all the things that you can do. You're missing a lot of stuff when you get Copilot Chat. For example, you're missing all of those app-based Copilots. So things like Copilot for Teams, Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Well, Outlook's not much of a miss. If you're like me, you think that the Outlook Copilot is absolute trash. It's a horrible job at summarization of long emails. But another thing that you notice that you are also missing is that when you just have like standard prompts that you're sending to Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, Microsoft has always told us that all of those are grounded in our organizational data. But in Copilot Chat, it's not. First, these names suck. This new name is terrible. It's one of the worst names they could have come up with. It's Copilot Chat. Well, I thought I chatted with Microsoft 365 Copilot. How is that different? It's absolutely, the naming is terrible. So here's what's cool about this. So I just saw TS, which you just posted. This is what I'm going. This is what I'm getting to. All right, I just saw what you just posted in the chat. Here's what's really cool about this. Not only do I have no commitment that I have to make, that $30 per user per month with an annual commitment, the consumption-based pricing is all based on a metered rate of 1 cent. So 1 penny in US dollars. So 1 penny, 1 cent per message. So how do you figure out how much a message is? Is that just like one request and one response? No, it's not. If you are like in Copilot Studio, you can have predefined responses that you say, if the user is doing this, then give this response. That is one message. If you have a generative message, so you're using a large language model or something like GPT to have a more creative answer that you're letting the large language model create that creative answer, that is going to cost you 2 messages, so 2 pennies. Then let's just look down here. What if I want to ground my message in data from Microsoft Graph? In other words, my organizational data. That's 30 messages. So if I issue a prompt to Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, and I specify that it needed to go get data from my like my calendar or from my email. Well, it's getting data using the tenant grounding of Microsoft Graph grounding, which basically means I want your response to be contextual about my organization. I want your knowledge to be grounded in my data and how you respond to me. So I could go get some data using by the grounding, and then I could have a generative response. So that's 32 messages. Think about it from this perspective here. I go through a little like example of what about if I created this thing called like a sales performance agent, right? And let's say that every time it made a request, the agent's going to have 4 generative answers. So that's 4 messages times 2, 2.2. That's a typo. 2 messages times 4 is 8 messages. And then I'm going to have to add in those same messages. I'm going to have also the grounded prompts to go along with it, right? So that's going to be another 120 messages if I do this 4 times, right? So I've got 120 messages. So each message then is going to consist of each request is going to consist of 128 messages. Now, let's just say I'm in an organization with 150 people and salespeople, and let's just say that 50 of those employees have been licensed with the $30 per user per month Microsoft 365 Copilot license. In other words, they are on the all-you-can-eat plan. That is going to cost those 50 users, right? Those 50 users at $30 per month is going to cost about $18,000 in our licensing costs. All right. Now, you've now got another 100 people. Okay, but the thing, one thing that's nice about that is they're in the all-you-can-eat. They can do not just this agent, but they can use any of our agents and everything else in Copilot and have a ton of and get a ton of use it as much as they like and no extra cost. But those extra 100, they are going to be using the pay-as-you-go model at 1 cent per message. Now, just think about this. If they use the same prompt, only 10% of their working days, right? And assuming they only worked 5 days a week, 48 weeks a year, I'm being generous, 4 weeks of vacation plus, personal time off, plus like bank holidays. That means that they are going to be spending in total about $3,000 in consumption spent. So 100 people only spending $3,000 or 50 spending $18,000. But one little catch with that 100 is only that one agent. And they're not using any other parts of Copilot that could be metered, right? And other agents that are going to be there. So you look at this and go, okay, this is all expensive. But then you have to take a step back and think about it. And you're like, wait a minute. Let me just double check, make sure my math is right. Something doesn't seem right all of a sudden. Now that I'm actually reading this, I'm wondering if I made a mistake here. 50 times 360. Yeah, that's right. 50 times 360 is 18,000. Okay. So, I guess what I'm saying here is you look at it and you go like, is that expensive or not? Well, maybe or not. But here's the thing. As an organization, this is a great way for you to try out Microsoft 365 Copilot without making a 1-year commitment, right? And giving it to everybody in your organization. So that's one nice thing. The other nice thing, though, is that I think this is a great thing for developers for 2 reasons. Number one, you don't have that huge upfront commitment of $30 per user per month and having to buy a commercial license. Now you can do consumption, but not only that, but if you have one of those developer tenants, you can also associate your Microsoft, you can also associate the consumption billing in your Microsoft 365 developer program subscription provided tenant with an Azure resource group. And now your licensing is just going to plummet down to almost nothing except for the consumption of how much you end up using this. But think about it. If you're a consultant, you can bill that straight to a client and you can say like, I worked on this during this amount of time for this month, and I can go look in the Azure cost and budget app, and I can see how much I spent on this one project, right? And I could tag it and everything like that and be able to track this stuff. So I walked through this and why I think this is a big deal. That just got fixed right beforehand, so sorry about that. If you want to learn how to do this, I see TS, I know you already done this, but if you want to see how to do this, you can go to this next article that I have, which this walks you through how to set this up. The first thing you have to do is you have to grant the user that is the admin user in your Microsoft 365 tenant, you have to give it at least contributor or owner. You have to assign one of those 2 roles to that user in your Azure subscription. And then once you've added that role, so here you can see I am going to validate that user now has that contributor rights. Then what I can do is go into the Power Platform Admin Center, which is where you set up this licensing. You create a new billing plan for Copilot Studio. You pick the Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat. You specify the billing plan that you want to use. And so you give it a name. You pick your Azure subscription. That's why you have to, that user has to have access to it. And then you can you tell it what resource group you want to use. And now you will have, after a couple minutes, so it'll be in this provisioning state for a bit. But after you do this, after a couple minutes, you'll have this metered billing set up now. And so that's cool because now I don't have to go through into detail all of this about like, I don't have to go through and have a much bigger, like another tenant. Me personally, I'm super selfish about this because now I don't have to pay for a commercial tenant that also has a 365 license on it and use that in all my recordings and all my demos or when I present at a conference. So I've done a couple Copilot workshops and I've had to use my production tenant for this, which I really disliked and seeing like my meetings and stuff. But anyway, this is a big deal. And if you're interested in learning more about this, again, you can go to my website right now and find these articles. They're the 2 most recent articles on my site. If you go right here, if you go to learn and go to articles, they're the 2 most recent. Oh, that's caching hasn't caught up there. So do a hard refresh. They're the 2 most recent articles that you see here. One down here about when I was talking about the pricing, and then one up here. I do have a few typos I need to fix right there. I did notice that as I was going through that. So let me just write this down and say article typos. cool. All right. So hopefully that was interesting to some of you. I see TS got a couple comments there translating the pricing on how that stuff works. I can't tell who M365 Thinking is. I can barely see your picture in the chat. I think I know who you are, but I don't want to say it so I don't mess it up. But you say, if you use it a lot, then it must be useful and worth the money is my argument with the people, with the money people want a fixed price. Yeah, so here's the thing with that. If you're, like for me, would I prefer to allocate $360 against my account to make sure, and for the entire year, and know like I don't have to worry about how much I use it. I kind of like that as an option, but I also have a tenant where my wife is also in that tenant and my kids are as well for their personal emails. And I might not. I might rather just go through and say, you want to use Copilot, go for it. You can use it. I'll put you on the consumption plan and I'll just watch and say like, okay, it's gonna be cheaper if I drop $360 a year on you. Anyway, these are good options for you. And this is why I think this is a big deal, like a big deal for developers. So I'm really thrilled about this, really happy about it. If you got any questions about this, definitely drop them in the chat. I'm doing an interview with one of the guys at Microsoft that owns the developer experience for Microsoft 365 Copilot. I would love to, I'd love to talk to him. I'd love to go through and share some of these questions with him or corner him next time I talk to him. Okay, so let's go back to our slides. We got a couple more things I want to run through here. There were a few other updates, but as a developer, we don't really care so much. The URL change, big deal. It's going to be a redirect. They changed the name of it. So now on your mobile device, where if you had the Microsoft 365 app, now they're calling it Microsoft 365 Copilot. You know, I thought this AI stuff was changing really, really fast. I think that Microsoft's renaming, changing pricing, changing SKUs, announcing new SKUs, all around their Copilot story. I think this is happening at a faster pace than we're seeing just across the entire tech landscape. And frankly, personally, I think they're doing a really crappy job of communicating this stuff. It is super hard to figure this stuff out, and all that pricing stuff. I had to go through like 10, 15 different articles to figure it out. As like TS mentioned, I don't know why Microsoft is so cryptic about pricing sometimes because they don't want to hide how expensive it is. Okay. So that's everything that I wanted to cover first. I thought you were Casper. Okay, cool. Thanks for posting that. Okay, so let's tackle some questions. So please, Mike, are you here? Please tell me you're here, Mike. Is Mike here? Mike. All right. I hope Mike's here. Anyway, let's go in and let me go tackle some of the questions that were submitted. So I've got one from Mike. Mike will be first. I've got one from Jono, and then I have one from Eric that I see you've posted here. And actually, is Eric, are you down here? Yeah, down there. Okay, too. So I saw you posted above too, so I'll take care of it. Okay, so let's look at Mike's question first. So I'm going to summarize a little bit about what Mike said here. The gist is he's in a scenario where he needs to deploy. It's a SharePoint Framework question. So in the SharePoint Framework, you can keep things from getting sucked into the bundle that's being generated for your component, Let me say this again. So he wants to be able to take. So in the SharePoint Framework, if you reference an external library, like let's just say, for example, you're referencing Moment.js. If you don't do anything, if you just install Moment.js in your project and you import it into your web part code, what you will get when you build the project is a much bigger web part bundle because it's going to suck in Moment.js into your project, right? It's going to suck that into your project. Let me make that a little bigger. Into your bundle, I mean. The proper way to do it is to externalize it. And instead of putting Moment.js in the web part bundle, you're instead going to tell the SharePoint Framework go download Moment.js from a CDN onto the page before you load my web part, and my web part will just use that bundled version of Moment.js. It's a much more performant way of doing things. But in Mike's scenario, he's like, that's not going to work for me because I work a lot of my customers are in I'm just going to put in air quotes, but an air gapped scenario, meaning those machines don't have internet access. They're doing everything on-prem, and which is common like in the intelligence agency or secure environment. So he says, I don't want to put it in the bundle because it's going to make the bundles huge. I want to take advantage of like the CDN style way of externalizing it, but I can't go through and have an external reference. I need to download the external reference from the CDN, and I want to kind of put it in my own CDN. How do I do that? And he wants to include that as part of the deployment of the project. So what he was showing was he was running into some weird stuff here. So if you look at his project, and that's a little hard to see if I can zoom in more. If you look at his project here, he's added in a couple files like this deploy file, this Teams.js file, this SharePoint.js file, and the SharePoint image file, and this image icon. He's added these throughout his project, as well as one here right down here in the root. But the problem that he ran into is that when he deployed the project, the only one that showed up here, the only JavaScript file that showed up was the Teams file. The image, the app icon did get uploaded as well, but when it was deployed to his his SharePoint environment, I'm guessing because he's on-prem, it's going to be like 2019 or SE. He still wasn't having the ability to go through and to include these files in the project. So, or include them in the CDN or in the client-side assets library, which is in SharePoint Online, that's backed by a CDN. But in this case here, it's not going to be backed by a CDN when he's on-prem. So he's like, so the rest of his question, I've got it shared here, but essentially the question is, why do I not get everything? What's the rhyme and reason of getting all this different stuff to show up? And then he's asking about, can we go through and we put these things in subfolders? So really quick, no, you can't do stuff in subfolders, or at least there's no, I'm not familiar with any way of being able to do that. I've never seen that possible. I've not seen that being an option that's possible here. And then you reference another sample that another discussion was happening in our mastermind about someone wanting to use the React Monaco library, but not including it in the bundle and rather externalizing it, but not from a CDN. Instead, I want to externalize it inside my own project. Is there a way to do this? How does it work? So yes, there is. So images that you reference, those will be included like this, and they will be a reference like you saw. JavaScript files, though, they're not. And it's just the way the SharePoint framework works, but they don't do that with JavaScript files. The Teams folder is different, and I don't understand why the JavaScript file was showing up there. But I'm going to show you a better way of doing this instead of just saying it's like a magical way of why doesn't this work. So the trick is you're going to do the exact same thing that you would do if you're using a CDN and you were hosting it in a live like CDN.js, all right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create a new folder in my project here. So I'll just call it assets. And inside of assets, I'm going to create a new file called library.js. And this JavaScript file, this is where like you would put in like you would actually put Moment.js in here, or jQuery, or the Monaco editor, any library that you want to end up using. And I'm just going to put in a console.log and just say, yo mama. All right. Now, I'm not going to run this because it doesn't really matter what's in here, but I just wanted to prove the point. Now, how do I make sure that number one, how do I use this file and make sure it's loaded on the page? But number two, how do I make sure that it is not included in the bundle and it's uploaded as a separate file in the CDN or into the client-side assets library, and it's a JavaScript file. So you saw Mike was having an issue getting this done. Here's how you do it. You're going to go into the config folder, and under config.json, we are going to go into the externals. And normally in externals, you would give it a name and a property. So you would say something like, I'll just call this one my library, and you have an option here to either use like an object, like you see I've got it listed here. That's one. Or instead, you can just say, if you don't want to give it a name, you can just go through and give it the full path of where that file is. Except in this case, I don't want it to go to an HTTPS endpoint. I want it to be relative. I want it to pull the file from assets library.js. Right? So that's where it's going to pull this file from. It's going to load it from this separate location here. And that's the location where I want it to pull it from in my project. And actually, I need to drop back. Is it just one? I'm going to be inside source. I'm going to want to go back to me pulling it from my web part. So I'm going to want to pull it from. No, I think that's right. I think I'll leave it like that. So that's one. Yeah, so that's the root of the root relative of the project. Now that I've done this, this is going to tell Webpack, don't suck this file into my bundle. The second thing that I need to do though, now that I've done this, it's going to keep that file separate and it's going to be included in my package, is I need to go through and get it loaded. Now, how does Webpack know to see this file and treat it as an external reference? Well, it needs to know that when there's a request for my library, it needs to know that that's something this component needs. So I need to make sure I put a request in for it and tell the module loader in the SharePoint Framework runtime, go load this library, wherever location it is, go load it on the page, and then load my web part. How does Webpack do that? Webpack does that by, once I go into my web part, like right here, to get this file loaded inside of all the, after all the import statements, because the one I was just loading here is not a it's not a module, I'm just going to use the require syntax and say require my library. And I'm using the same name. I'm using the same name that I listed over here inside of the config file. So this is going to tell Webpack that when he starts going through and looking at all these import statements, there's something else he needs to go import, but he's going to find it over here and say, nope, not supposed to import it. So instead, I'm just going to log that this should be pulled in before I load this component, and it's going to load it the SharePoint framework. So now what I should be able to do, and to prove that this works, is let's come over to the console and let's do an npm bundle -p, and then I do, no, not npm, gulp, and a gulp package solution -p. All right, now I'm not going to run this and like go deploy it to solution here just in the interest of time, but I am going to show you how things are getting referenced here. Okay, so now if I go over here and I look at the SharePoint folder and look at the debug folder inside of it, let's get rid of everything that I have open. And if I look at the client-side assets folder, which is everything that's going to go inside of the client-side assets library, I will find my library listed right there. My library with the hash on the end of it. And that reference is going to know that when this loads on the page, when it finds that hash, it's going to be okay to, it's going to know to go through and add that as a part of it at the very end. So my web part is still going to, my web part right here is still going to pull that request in, and that file is also going to end up being provisioned inside the client-side assets library. And if I come down here and look at, I think it's in the feature, is that right? Oh, no formatting this. Let's say my library, it's not in that one. How about library.js? It's not in that one. It's going to be in this feature then maybe. Library.js. Nope, it's not in that one. Nope. Find library. Where is it? It's going to get deployed because you see it listed there. Is it in Rails? I always forget what this is. At any rate, it's going to get done. You don't have to worry about that. It's going to go through and to take that file and it's going to shove that in the client-side assets library. And now when my project, when the SharePoint framework runs, it's going to know that it needs to load that library. I can show you, I guess, part of that if I look at the, let's do this. Let's do a gulp bundle And let's look at the manifest that gets generated, which the manifest will be, which one's not hashed? Well, that one will still work. Get rid of that. Nope, wrong key. There it is. So there's the library file that it's going to be pulling in. So this in the manifest is essentially saying that before this bundle gets loaded for my web part, all of this other stuff needs to get loaded. And at the very bottom, you see that one thing that has to get loaded before all the other ones is this my library reference to get this loaded on the page. You see it already has the hash that's going to pull in. So that's the instruction to system.js, which is the module loader in the SharePoint Framework runtime, to go pull this file down. So that's how you do it, Mike. Hopefully that helps. I can't explain to you why the SharePoint Framework just doesn't arbitrarily put JavaScript files inside of the client-side assets library. I can't explain why it does it for images, but it's not doing it for other stuff. The reason why, though, I think it is, and I can't be certain about it, is because JavaScript files have to load in a synchronous manner because there's a dependency between each one of them. And so it just can't arbitrarily put it there. It's got to know which one it needs to pull in in what order. Images, though, that's different. Images don't matter because images are not loading, are loaded separately in parallel from when a page is rendered. So when you put a request out for an image, you can see the whole page can get rendered and images can take a second to show up. CSS is the same way. So that's why, and I hope that answers your question. Great question, though. Great question. Okay, second question was Jono. Jono said, can I cover how to, in the chat, Jono said, can I cover how to clean up Teams apps that were tested locally? I've got duplicate message extension apps showing up in my composer input now. Oh yeah, royal pain in the butt. I hear you. So here's what you're gonna do. So let's open up a browser. So there are two ways you can do this. There's the slow way and there's the faster way. Let's go to teams.microsoft.com. And at the same time, oh, that's not right. What did I do? Teams, T-E-A-M-S, micro, it's not Microsoft, it's Microsoft. There we go. And it's going to make me log in. Yep. Oh man, I should have logged in before I started this. You know what? I'm just going to do it on another machine. So let's do this. Dev, copy, nope. Dev, copy, come over here, paste it, go back to my other machine, copy. So there's two ways to do it. There's actually three ways to do this because Microsoft can't give you just one way to do it. They have to give you three different ways and you have to decide which one's the best one, right? Okay, and then I want the, what is it? Teams Developer Portal. Developer Portal. Okay. So one way of getting rid of this, come over here, is I can go to My Apps into the Teams client. I can find apps built by your organization, see all. It should show me all of the apps that I've created and deployed in my organization. I could choose this, that's not where I wanted to do it. I would go down to Manage Your Apps, and here I could start deleting individual apps. So I could like pick this, and then I could say remove, and then it would go ahead and delete this. And it may give you an error because it's being used inside of a team or a channel and you got to go remove it from there and blah, blah, blah. But that's one way to do it. That's tedious. The slightly less tedious, but still tedious, is to use the developer portal. And so here, if you're in the developer portal and you log into your account for your tenant, I can then come over here to apps and I can see a list of all of my apps. Want to see a funny little UI bug that they haven't fixed yet? I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go delete another notification bot. So watch this. I'm going to come over here, select it and say delete. And it says you have to type in notification bot. I don't ever type that in. I just copy it and paste it. Now, watch this. I'm going to go ahead and delete it. So remember, it's called notification bot 1. Delete. It just deleted it. I want to get rid of command bot. So I'm going to say right click, delete, and it says type in notification bot 10 local. Okay. It just deleted the command bot. That doesn't seem right, but it worked. Okay, so that's another way that you can do it. And this shows me all the stuff that I have installed in my tenant. Still a little bit of a pain, but what if I have the source code on my machine? Okay, this is the one I have to remember. I have to remember the syntax for this off the top of my head. So first of all, npm list g, do I have the Teams app CLI installed? No, I don't. So I have to go npm install Teams app. Is it Teams app CLI like that? Or is it at Microsoft Teams app CLI? Oh, I forget. At Microsoft / Teams app CLI, install that globally. If that doesn't work, then I'll try. Anyway, what this does, Jono, okay, cool. There is a command of, I think, like clean up or uninstall. So npm, Teams app help uninstall. So that uninstall right there is going to clean up all of the resources associated with it. And then and it's going to prompt you as it does it. So it's going to include, like, I can get rid of stuff in the bot framework portal, in the Teams developer portal. I can get rid of stuff inside of, I think it'll also even do the Microsoft Intra ID application as well. It might do that one too. So you can use that to delete stuff. You have to do that from the root of the project that you created that's on your local machine. So if you've got a folder with all of these guys I see here, it would go through and remove those. So what I do is I went to ChatGPT and I said, this console that I use here called Warp, W-A-R-P, what this does, it's got AI infused in it. And so it's like, I can say for each folder inside of this, for each subfolder inside of this folder, which is where all of my Teams projects are, I was like, go enumerate through it and run Teams app space uninstall with any additional options that I specify to automatically go through and clean that stuff out. And I do that after like teaching a session at a conference or a workshop. It walks through and it deletes everything for me, and I just let it run on the background. So that's the less tedious way of doing it and more automated. So that's one way. That's answering one question. Okay, so next question. I've got 8 minutes left before we got to wrap it. Great questions, guys. I want to talk a little bit about that Copilot stuff early on. So sorry we're running a little bit short here. Usually I don't get all these questions. This is fantastic though, so thank you. All right, Eric. Eric says, let's just go back over to Discord real quick and let's look at the question there. Eric. So this other question I skipped over here from, I don't know his name, SSCHAFF. He posted a question somewhere else in Discord and said, hey, would you tackle this question? And I'm like, what's the question? I didn't see it. So, but we've already gone through and I've already addressed it with him somewhere else. So I think he's in good shape now, or she, I'm not sure. Okay, Eric says, bit unclear on the checkbox, make the solution available to all sites in the organization option when you upload your SharePoint Framework app to an app catalog. You've got two app catalogs, one main for your tenant, and another one is a site-specific app catalog. If I check the checkbox when I upload my app to the site-specific app catalog, it will automatically update the app on all the other sites. No, it is only going to apply to the app catalog in the container that you're in and everything down. But because effectively that's moot when you do that in the site collection app catalog. That checkbox is only really useful at the tenant scoped app catalog. It's just the dialog that pops up to check to see if you want to do that is the same dialog we get in both app catalogs. So I've never seen it make a difference at the site collection app catalog level. You're also curious. Oh wait, hold on. That's the other question. Two app catalog. Da, da, da. Okay, so that's your question, Eric. I do believe I got that one done. Actually, let's scroll up here. So I wanted to just keep track of that. So pin. Jono's question was pinned. Eric's question. Oh, no, never mind. That's not what I wanted. Okay, so now next question is, let's go back down to, who was the next one? Jono has a follow-up question. You said, so this can't be used with the Copilot app in Teams when testing a declarative agent plugin. That's correct. That's correct. When I'm assuming you're talking about the Microsoft 365 Copilot chat. That's correct. The way you would test it, the way you're going to do all of your Copilot work then is by going to office.com/chat or the m365copilot.com link. So now you're going to, let's go back over here. Where's my VM? So let's go to office.com/chat. So this is where the Copilot chat would be available to you. You would have like a web or, and for here I'm not, wait a minute. Does this know I'm logged? It is. It knows I'm logged in. That's my developer tenant account. I thought. Well, the UX has changed yet again. Thanks, Microsoft. I'm confused now. You would do it through the web interface, where you choose either web or work between the two different options. But yeah, you don't have access to Copilot inside of Teams if you're using the Copilot chat license. So the M365 Copilot chat with the consumption-based pricing, you don't get the Teams app immersive experience. You do that through the web experience instead. But you do have access to like custom agents that you create, like this repairs one that I created the other day. Let's see. Next question. Jono says, you have a solution that's using the MGT persona component that's rendered on each table of items, and many of the users rendered are repeat. Is there a good way to optimize this? I don't know. I'm not as familiar with the MGT library. I'm not familiar with how they do that. I'm not sure if it's cached, to be honest with you. I'm not really sure. That's a good question. Is there a good way to optimize this? That's one of those things, like MGT gives you the way to build that component out, but is it a, what caching capabilities and stuff does it have? You may end up wanting to just take their source code and re-implement it so that you can have a cached implementation of it. I don't know if there's a way that you can pass in the, well, no, if it's doing a live data call every single time, then it's probably not going to be caching it. So that's one of those things that you could use the MGT source code, because it's open source, to see how they're doing it, and you could implement the caching on your own. Okay, so I have another question here from Don. Doesn't the deploy checkbox also activate the feature? Yeah, it does. The deploy checkbox does, but the whole thing about make that available everywhere. That deploy, well, the deploy, it's not. I didn't think the deploy, it was a deploy checkbox. It's a button that you just say deploy it, and that's like the way of like approving it. The component and the app catalog, right? I think so. Okay. Let's see here. Yes, on the current site, that's correct. Okay. So with that being said, we're right up here, right up against time. So I want to first thank all of you for joining me today for my monthly office hours. If you got any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I will see that stuff in the future and happy to go through and address them. I do these office hours on a monthly basis, usually the third Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern time every month. The next one is already set up, and you can go to the site, you can go to YouTube and find it listed under my future webinars that are listed, or future live streams. And you can register, you can go ahead and click notified to get notified before when this goes live, or that it's coming up. Furthermore, if you sign up to the newsletter, to my newsletter at newsletter.voitanos.io, in the emails that you receive, if you scroll to the very bottom, there's a link that says manage your subscription. And if you manage your subscription, there's an option to also opt in and get an update, a reminder about a week and a half before, so the Monday prior to the newsletter, to the office hours, that a new office hours is coming up. And if you have a question, you could submit it via email, and I will, like in Mike's example, I will tackle that as one of our first questions that we address. So with that, I want to make sure I'm respectful of everybody's time. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining me today. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the week. And I hope to see you next month. Hopefully I got a nice big update for you by then. And a new website, we'll see. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.